for the third and final debate of this election season. This is for the at-large city councilors. 6 running for 4 seats, and I'd like to say we have Jason Grow and Val Gilman and Tony Gross, Chris Sikaranza, Jamie O'Hara, and Jeff Worthley, and thank you so much, all of you, for coming. So my name is Valerie Nelson. I'm on the board of the Lanesville Community Center, and we welcome all of you, and we'd like to thank 1623 as well for live streaming and recording this event. So basically, the way we do this out here with debates is that we send questions days ahead of time to the candidates, and these questions will be read to you before they have 1 minute, 2 minutes, something in that range each to answer them, and we'll alternate starting with a different candidate on a rolling basis. At the end of that Q&A, our basic questions they've gotten ahead of time will allow for a couple-minute concluding comments and their campaign pitch from each of them. And then we're delighted to be able to take questions from the floor. So you'll raise your hand, and then each candidate will have 1 minute to do a response, and maybe at the end they'll have a few concluding comments. I'd like to thank very much our timekeeper first, who is pitching in at the last minute. Doug Parsons is a Lanesville neighbor. And I'd really like to thank our moderator of the evening. Dick Prouty is also a Lanesville neighbor. So thank you to both of you. And let's begin. Dick.
Just the format, we've got 5 questions. Some of them are 2 parts. Most of them are 2 minutes each. And one of them is 3 minutes, including a 2-minute and a 1-minute. So that's going to take us for the first hour. And then we've got concluding comments and the campaign pitch for 2 minutes each at the end. So that's where we're going. The first question is basically an introduction of yourself to the voters. What is important for voters to know about your background and the strengths you will bring to the City Council? What particular needs in the community are you personally most concerned about, and which constituents do you hope to be a voice for? 2 minutes each, and we're going to start with Jason.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for being here tonight, and Val and Dick. Do we have to lean into these things? As introduced, I'm Jason Grow. I am the ward. What am I? The at-large counselor. Thank you very much. A little rattled tonight. I am 33 year married to Sarah Grow, who many of you know through the open door. I have 3 daughters. We have 3 daughters, Matilda, Maisie, and Jemima, who are all graduated from the Gloucester school system. Have done successfully through college, and are now engaging in starting their own lives. I'm a surfer and a beekeeper, so I care very much about our environment. We are homeowners who lived in Gloucester for 23 years, having moved here from San Francisco. As an at-large councilor, I serve as the chair of the Planning and Development Committee, and previously I served 2 terms as a Ward 1 city councilor about 15 years ago. I was the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee then. So I bring a lot of experience in terms of being on the council and understanding the issues that we're facing today. My time on the Budget and Finance Committee happened to be during one of the most dire economic times, and my time on the Planning and Development Committee seems to be the dire housing affordability times. So I don't know if that's my fault or if it's just circumstance. My most immediate concerns are housing affordability. You know, I look around our community and I think, you know, I came to Gloucester with the hope of raising my family here and setting down our generational roots here. And it's becoming increasingly clear that my kids are going to have a really hard time moving back home. And that distresses me, and it distresses me that there are a lot of families out there. Wow, that's fast. The other issues that are of absolute concern to me are economic development, job creation, prioritizing and doing infrastructure improvements that need to be done on a timely basis, and before we kick them down the road for our kids to worry about. I'd like to see more aggressive support for people who have housing and food insecurity. We have a tremendous need in terms of poverty and near poverty in this community. And that's it. Okay. That's it. It's a fast 2 minutes. It's a fast 2 minutes.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see so many friends and people from all over the community here today. Thanks to Lanesville Community Center for hosting this. My name is Val Gilman. I'm currently the Ward 4 City Councilor. I've been that for 8 years. I've been a Gloucester resident for 54 years, first in Ward 1 and now a Bayview resident for the last 25 years. Married for 38 years. I have two wonderful children who were born and raised here in Gloucester, Casey, who is 35, and Jared, who is 23. I graduated from UMass Amherst, and I have my degree in psychology, and I got my master's degree, an MS from Lesley University back in 2002. I had a 25-year career in human resources management, all in high-tech companies, including vice president and officer of a Fortune 500 company headquartered in Wakefield. When my child Jared was born in 2000, I retired from high-tech. I completed my master's degree and did some part-time HR consulting work. At about that time, Jared was getting ready to enter school. I got involved with the PTO at Plum Cove, and then someone sucked me into running for school committee. And I served in the school committee for 6 years. I was chair for 2. It was an incredibly awesome experience. And then I took 2 years off. I was on the Gloucester Ed Foundation board and did a lot of other fun things for the community. And then after that, I decided to run for city council. At this time, I'm president of the city council. I've enjoyed serving the community. So what constituent should I be a voice for? All of you are my constituents. What are my strengths? My ability to listen, my leadership skills, and my institutional knowledge and my understanding on how to navigate best practices and legislate needed change. Our needs: more affordable workplace housing, public discourse, community engagement, infrastructure improvement planning and funding, protection and maintenance of our open space and downtown parking. And I now have been asked to stop. So thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you so much. Thank you to the Lanesville Community Center, 1623 Studios, and everybody who's here. I appreciate this opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself. A lifelong resident of Gloucester. Spent most of my working career as a commercial fisherman, but also was fortunate enough to be able to be brought into the construction trade with someone who was very patient to teach me how to do that. And then did a brief stint, a 5-year stint at the wastewater treatment plant, where I wound up as the assistant facilities manager there. Now, I tell you those two things. The construction, the fishermen, of course, that's very important to this community because that's where our roots are and where we've always come from. But the construction and the wastewater stuff is really important right now with more construction than we've had going on, more expensive construction, and then particularly the wastewater plant is going to be a big one, and we need people who are overseeing the expenses on that, who know what it takes to build a secondary treatment plant, and I do have some idea about that, having spent 5 years in that career. Married to my lovely wife Abby for 35 plus years. We raised 2 kids in Gloucester. Housing affordability, we have one back at home with us, and so that just tells you what that's all about. There is no housing affordability here for young people like there was in our day, and that's really unfortunate. In my family, we were taught, that you had to have a commitment to the community, and that's where I come from. I also come from in my family, we were taught that if you weren't part of the solution, you were part of the problem, and so that's how I face everything. Is how do we solve this problem, and if we can't solve it, how can we at least make it better? And so that's what I think constituents need, is they need a voice who will talk to them honestly and help them process through whatever the issue is and help them make it better.
And Chris. Thank you, Tony.
Hi, folks. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah. My name is Chris Carranza. I'm running for one of your 4 votes for councilor at large, and I'm up here because I want to be your voice. I'll answer the last question first. The role of councilor at large is to make sure that they are listening to all voices across all wards, all neighborhoods. I'm proud to say that I've knocked on 2,500 doors across the summer and fall. I've talked to every community over here. That's Bayview, Riverdale, Riverview, Lanesville, of course, too. And a little bit more about my background of how I came to be here. Previously, I was in the city of Salem, where I had a LGBTQ group called Go Out Loud. That's where I met my darling husband, who's in the back of the room here, Frank. And we were the first LGBTQ couple to get married by a sitting mayor at City Hall, by Mayor Safath Romeo-Taken. I served as the first ever Director of Communications and Constituent Services under her administration. I was proud to do that. We helped work on a lot of things, including social media, timely responsiveness. So communications is a central part of what I want to work on as a counselor at large if I'm elected. Otherwise, I had the pleasure of serving as the Chief of Staff in the City of Haverhill, Chief of Staff in the City of Salem. I was also, while I was helping to transition between Mayor Romeo-Taken and Mayor Greg Verga, serving in the capacity of doing a transition, I was also going back to school under MMA Suffolk for public administration. So when I tell you that I know what I'm doing in this regard, I hope you can take my word for it. But actions speak louder than words. We have an affordable housing crisis. We have infrastructure that needs to be tackled. We have a crisis of character, frankly, and we have to invest in leaders that are investing in you. So again, I'm asking for one of your 4 votes. You'll hear about from all of us tonight, but I encourage you to consider who you're casting a vote for and who's going to have a short-term and a long-term vision to ensure they're listening to all of you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Jamie O'Hara. I've been an at-large counselor for 8 years, 4 terms. I grew up in Gloucester, went through the Gloucester High School, graduated class in 1980, continued at Wentworth Institute in Boston, have a bachelor's degree in building construction engineering. I've been in construction my entire life. That has taken me all over the United States, Puerto Rico, into Canada. I started in 1985 on my first heavy construction job out of state. That was in White River Junction on a fish ladder. I've been traveling throughout the United States my entire career, but Gloucester has always been my home. I was born here, raised here, and more than likely I will die here. One of the cities that I worked in, I ran a company for 7 years, was Lewiston, Maine. So I'm very touched by what took place last night. I know the area. I know the 2 establishments where the shooter unfortunately killed 18 at this point. I've been watching it since my sister gave me the heads up that it took place. I've been all night monitored the goings on. I can tell you it's very disturbing, and to think that Lewiston is just a mere hour and 45 minutes away. The shooter has not been captured, that could take place, and unfortunately, he could be any place right now. I stand behind the people, as one constituent said. I could be on the moon, but I'm gonna stand up for the citizens of Gloucester. It doesn't make a difference where I am. I return calls, I answer emails. I will stand up for every citizen of the city of Gloucester. I take my job extremely seriously. Those of you who know it know that I am speaking the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie, and now Jeff.
Thank you. I was going to, a little note here, to ask for a moment of silence, and I'll be happy to give my time up for that, for the events in Lewiston, Maine, as well as for peace in the Middle East. So if we could do that for a minute or 20 seconds or so, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. My name is Jeff Worthley. I'm an at-large city councilor. I've served this last 2 years, and I think I've served well. But I started my public service, the first time I ran for city council was in 1999. I didn't win. I ran again in 2001 and 2003. Both those years I won. When I come to Lanesville, and I come specifically here, I do feel like I'm coming home in many ways. The first time I ever voted, I voted for Valerie Nelson as your Ward 4 city councilor.
That goes back.
It goes back. I know. Sorry if that makes you feel old, but sorry. I graduated high school in 1995. I think you were on the council then, and again in 97. So when I was driving here with my kids tonight, they're both with me. My daughter, as we pulled on a high street, said, "Oh no, I miss Plum Cove School," because both of my kids went to Plum Cove School. I went to Beaman School myself. In fact, the tree that's planted in the middle of the rotary at Beaman School, I was the sample student, I guess, that came out and with Mr. Wolf planted that tree. So my roots are very strong here in Ward 4 and in Gloucester. Public service is in my blood. I think if there was a DNA test, I think that would come up more than anything else. My mother was a teacher, a paraprofessional in the Gloucester school systems. Gloucester Schools, I'm sorry. My dad was an education major. Both my sisters are teachers and social workers. They're twins and they kind of follow each other when they do that. And I think people know my grandfather, Earl Worthley. Earl and Worthley was a police officer for 37 years and retired as chief. And so it's in my blood, and I don't know anything else other than public service. I actually don't like politics at all, but I like public service. I just want to draw attention to my two kids. My son Jude is in 9th grade. He just got elected class president. And my daughter Lila, who just got picked to be lead part in a play at the drama club at O'Malley School. So they're why I'm running and why I want to stay involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Next question is on the roles and responsibilities of the city council, and it comes in two parts. The first is a minute and a half. You'll get the same 30-second warning. And this will start with Val, and I'm going to read the question now. The Mass Municipal Association website describes a major role for the city council as a policy-making body in a city whose responsibilities are to, quote, consider the city's goals, major projects, infrastructure improvements, community growth, land use, finances, and strategic planning, unquote. Are there major policy areas you might like to see the city council take the initiative on and be significantly involved with in shaping the future of the city going forward? 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Val, for adding this question. I love this question. So my first year in the council, 8 years ago, I was doing a lot of best practices, and I looked at Salem's strategic plan. And what Salem did every year is that they met with their ward councilors, the public, all their boards and commissions, and they came up with a strategic plan, and I was so intrigued. And I sent that to our CAO at the time, and he didn't feel at that point that we were ready to do that. So I think that it's time. I think that this is a great opportunity for us to take things like the comprehensive plan and narrow that down afterwards and become more smart with SMART goals for all of us. I see us going through this as a legislative group of officials and looking at ways that we can create objectives for us. What parts of the comprehensive plan can we make policy statements? What parts of the comprehensive plan can we come up with ordinances and zoning? And how are we going to hold ourselves accountable to the taxpayers by coming up with measurable, SMART goals so we can really make a difference in the future of the city? Thanks.
And Tony, thank you, Val.
So I think, it talks about, it quotes the Mass Municipal Association that we are to consider the city's goals. So that just reminds us that we are the legislative body, and we have to work in partnership with whoever the administration is. We have to make sure that there is a good relationship and that we are fully vested as equal partners in negotiating whatever plans need to come through. Of course, we on community growth, we are the arbiters of the last word on zoning. So that comes through, but that also comes through mainly from the administration through the planning board. They give us that. Land use financing and strategic planning. We get the budget, but we also, throughout the year, we have to approve many supplemental issues throughout and grants. We get millions of dollars of grants a year. And so we need to make sure that we do not overextend ourselves on any of these grants and be beholden to a position or a piece of infrastructure that will tax us later to lead us to have to make cuts elsewhere because we took this grant. So those are just some of the things that we need to do in order to consider all these subjects that you brought up. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And Chris?
So, kind of echoing the council president and Councilor Gross, you have to make sure that you're voting for people who actually know their lane. So I had the pleasure of working in the executive office, working for the mayor's office. I was the interim CAO. And the thing I'm probably most proud of is passing a balanced budget in harmony with the city council. And at a time when it was a pretty divisive time when we were going through an election year, changing of the administration, I think you have to be the adult in the room to make sure that you could still get a fair and balanced budget passed. And I think the taxpayers, as I'm talking to them, they don't feel like they're getting the biggest bang for their buck right now. especially when you look at some of our infrastructure needs, our roads especially. But also having effective communication. I think that's the role of an at-large candidate, is to make sure they're getting out there and having a two-way conversation, not a one-way conversation. So you can have all the plans you want, but you have to make sure that they're being activated in such a way that they're in sync with the belief of the Vox Populi, as it were. So I think that the biggest thing that I would like to work on is communications, if you couldn't tell. And I think that there's a way that in which we can introduce certainly civility, but also making sure that we're listening to all the different diverse voices of our community. And one of the best things that I think about in terms of working on these types of subjects is certainly going back to the MMA, the best practices, but making sure that we actually are thinking about tomorrow's future, and for the short term as well, how we can activate success as well. Sorry, that does go by fast.
Thank you, Chris and Jamie.
Thank you. As a at-large counselor, my main goal is standing up for the people, the citizens of Gloucester, trying to eliminate waste, trying to eliminate the word corruption was used a number of years ago by Mary Lou Tierney at public comment period. She was gavelled down by then Council President Paul Lundberg. I stood up for Mary Lou Tierney. I didn't know Mary Lou Tierney, but I stood up for her because this is America, freedom of speech. We have corruption in this city. It's no secret. We're looking at 8 units that were built on East Main Street. We as a council voted the special permit down. We voted it down. We did it all by the book. We were sold down the road by our city solicitor, Mr. Chip Payson. Council Gilman knows this. Council Gilman told me he's going away, but we were sold down the road. Corruption exists in this city. I am here standing up for the people. If you want somebody who's going to stand up for you, I'm your person. Otherwise, don't vote for me. But I am here to stand up for the people. Ethan Foreman knows this. He's a Times reporter here tonight. We have in the room Council Tracy O'Neill, Fatima Silver, 33 School Street. We'll get to Fatima Silver at another question, but I will stand up for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome.
Jeff.
Thank you. So I think one of the major roles of being a good city councilor, and I think all of us have touched on it, Chris has really nailed it, is being a good listener. And there's lots of ways of getting information. I too have gone door to door. I haven't hit 2,500 yet. I'm about 2147 as of yesterday. So I'm catching up to you. I'm getting there. But I think that there's something about, yeah, I'm campaigning, but I'm also listening. I'm hearing people at their place, at their home. I care. I think everyone knows that I care. I think everyone knows that all of us care. Peter Trigian was the mayor of Peabody for 26 years, and I knew him on a personal level. And he told me back in 1999 when I first ran, he said, you know, when you go to City Hall, you're a city councilor, there's going to be 10 or 15 people that are going to be very passionate about an issue, for or against something. You want to listen to them. And he said, you also represent the person who's homesick, home taken care of. He went through a whole list. Elderly parents, taking care of kids, working a second or third job. English isn't their first language. They have a phobia of speaking in public. They're afraid of consequences of speaking in public. And we represent you too. And I think that there has to be a level of trust to say, okay, I'm accessible. You can reach me. You can share your opinion with me. I may agree, may disagree. But you have to trust that we're going to take in all the points of view, whether they're in the room or not, because we're involved in the community enough to listen to our constituents. All of our taxpayers are the people we represent. There's a lot more to that question, but I think my time is just about up. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And finally, Jason.
You guys are quick on the clock there. I think Chris had a really great point, and that is that we have to understand our roles, and we need to stay in our lanes primarily. We are legislative. We are a co-equal part of this government. The mayor does what the mayor does in the administration, and the city council has a huge role, as everybody said, in listening to what the community wants. We're embarking on the community planning initiative, the mayor's office and the planning board. We need to use that as an opportunity to establish our priorities, not only for housing and development and what we want to do with our city and what kind of preservation we want to do, but infrastructure needs that we need to prioritize. We have a bad history in the city dealing with infrastructure needs, putting them off and allowing them to get more and more expensive. The problem doesn't go away, it gets worse. So I'm hoping that the council, when we start to get involved with the CPI, will make infrastructure planning a big part of this. Of course, the one big thing that we're going to have to deal with next year is on the housing affordability list and on is the MBT TOD overlay district. I hope to be on the Planning and Development Committee and have a strong hand in helping to guide that. That's going to take a lot of community input. And I think we're going to have a lot of meetings and a lot of opportunities for people to talk about what it is that we want it to be and how it's going to help and shape Gloucester.
Thank you very much, Jason. This next question. Oh, really? Didn't go? Okay, fine. No, you went first. This is yeah. We're going now. We're going to do a quick 1 minute. This is the 1 minute piece of roles and responsibilities. You had me there for a minute. Okay. Can you describe what you would see as your role in representing the people who elect you? What is your understanding of when it would be appropriate to approach city staff directly on behalf of constituents or in exploring issues you are thinking about more broadly? And when would it not be appropriate for you to contact city staff directly? 1 minute each, starting with Tony.
Okay, my role representing the people. Well, I'll just use one example that's close to this neighborhood. When the taco truck was being threatened, I went home after that meeting we had down Plum Cove Beach, and I wrote legislation that protected the taco truck. I think that is how we represent the people. We solve problems for them. We don't just air their grievances, we solve their problems. And not only for the taco truck, but for all the vendor spots around the city, to make certain that those spots were preserved for the purpose that they are, for the small businesses that they have. And to approaching city staff, we have to be recognized the city staff can't work for 10 different bosses. There's 9 of us, there's the mayor's office. We have to be respectful of their time. They have, they can't be doing research for us. We have to do our own research. And I think it's appropriate if you have a yes or no question to call them, but otherwise, if you have something more in depth, you should go through the mayor's office. That's how I feel.
Thank you. And Chris.
So I'm the only non-incumbent up here, so I can't really point to any specific legislation, ordinances, et cetera. But I did work as the interim CAO. I was on the licensing board. I did serve in a few different other roles as well, too. It's about relationship building. And so it's about understanding, again, going back to that phrase of knowing your lane to some extent. But I'm very fortuitous that I consider a lot of these people, they're former colleagues of mine. And so I think I have a different relationship in that regard, personally speaking. Professionally speaking, if the administration sets the tone such that they want to have it go through the mayor's office, that's probably the appropriate thing to do. And as the person that used to put the mayor's report together to give to the city councilors, I know that there's a process to which there's a way to formally communicate and informally communicate. But look, our job is not to create mischief and distractions. Our job is to work in harmony with the mayor's office to work for you. And that's what I plan on doing. If you give me one of your 4 votes, I will listen to you and I will make sure that I can get some feedback in that regard one way or another. But I think there is a professional tactic that you can enable as well.
Thank you, Chris. And now, Jamie.
Thank you. I'll continue on with Fatima Silva, 33 School Street. Her house burned a year ago. The people have read it. People have mentioned it to me tonight. I reached out to Donald Belcher. That started on a Sunday after Councilor Tracy O'Neill contacted me. I reached out to the homeowner, got her take. I immediately, after speaking with her, I immediately emailed the mayor. I do this because we as councilors do not control the city. I did this with Mayor Taken. I continue to do this with Mayor Verger. I only reached out to the building inspector after he answered an email that I sent to Mayor Verger that said, if you have any questions, contact me. Freedom of information, please feel free. They exist. That email exists. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. And Jeff.
Thank you. So in 1975, voters of Gloucester adopted this current city charter. And section 4-3 says 2 parts. A, that city councilors cannot work full-time as a city employee. You have your job as a city councilor. And B, if you were to, I'm sorry, part of A is if you were to take a city job, you can't take one for 2 years after your term expires, meaning you can't set yourself up for a position that you maybe retire with. The second part of it says, city councilors shall not interfere with the administrative function of the city. That is very different because I got to imagine when Gus Foote was city councilor, he wanted to get something done. He picked up the phone, he got it done, right? He didn't wait to get an email back from the mayor because he probably never used email. That said, I'm looking at a list here of, let's see, 152 requests from city councilors, and if it were all even, that'd be about 17 per. Well, 53 of them have come from me to the mayor, all documented, and most of them got done. So there is a symbiotic relationship with the mayor's office, but there's also the checks and balances. And sometimes that checks and balances means you need to get information that the mayor is not going to say yes to every time. So I think there's going to be a balance between advocacy for residents and working in the system the way we have
great,
it.
thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Jason, 1 minute.
All right. I think Tony and Chris both hit on major points, and that is the first thing to do is listen to the problem. You have to find out what the problem is. And if you know what the answer is, you can help navigate, you can help this person get through the various systems that they need to get through. And sometimes it's as simple as that. But when it comes to actually approaching city staff, Tony's right. They can't add 9 extra bosses on there. If each one of us calls one department head and talks to them for 10 days, it's an hour and a half out of their day. And they've got a lot of work to do. So, respect the protocol of going through the mayor. If you have a great relationship with department heads, it's often easy to get a very quick answer and to help facilitate a solution. But primarily, following the rules to the mayor's office, to the administration, is the way to get it done the most efficiently. And that's the way that I prefer to do things.
Thank you, Jason. And finally, Val, 1 minute.
So I actually led the taco truck meeting at Plum Cove Beach. We had a microphone, we listened, and we had to have civility through the whole meeting. And I would have to say that everyone in Lanesville did a great job because it was definitely testy, and we got through it and helped with the writing, with the ordinance changes that Tony took a lead on because we needed to make a difference. But that was good democracy. We need to be more than a voice of the people. We need to get things done. And if all we're doing is being the voice, we're not legislating. The only way we can make the city better is to get off our butts and do ordinances, make change, do best practices, and not just complain about it. If we just complain, we're part of the problems, and I'm really sick and tired of that being the norm for us. We need to work together with the mayor's office, but we need to do our job as legislators, or else we are not fulfilling that level of government in the city.
Okay, great. So now we're going to move on to the next major question on the housing development, and there's 2 parts to this, a 2-minute and a 1 minute. I'm going to start with Chris. Let me read the question. Residents have been concerned for years about the interrelated problems of affordable housing and overdevelopment. In your view, how do we get into this predicament where so many of us living here and our children cannot afford to buy or rent in the overheated real estate property markets? There are many different policies and investments that could be made going forward. What measures are on your list for actions to be taken by the city government? 2 minutes.
Thank you. So, as you've heard from pretty much all of us, workforce housing and making sure that we can keep generational folks here and successful here is a big topic of the conversations. I want to, first of all, applaud the Housing for All initiative, that group. If you didn't take a watch or listen to the forum that we had a couple of weeks ago, I strongly encourage you to watch that, because for those of us that participated in that and gave some answers, I think it gives you a lot of insights about the different tactics in our tool chest about how we can tackle this. There is no silver bullet. There is no magic wand. We have to work together to talk about ways to which we can activate development for the vast majority of us. Now, I'm the youngest person up on this stage. I just had the pleasure of buying a house down on Rust Island, and that has critical needs over there. I think there's a conversation, one of the questions here about Rust Island development, so we'll get to that later. But having the opportunity to buy a house in this community meant that I had to make sure that, first of all, I saved enough money. And that was because, as a result of my mother-in-law changing her house into a two-family house. Now, that wasn't an easy thing to do. That was a very arduous thing to do. But we had to do it in order to save up some money. So I also am making sure that I didn't get my secondary home that I have at my property into an Airbnb. I wanted to make sure I was giving an opportunity for young folks to succeed here. I didn't want it to go to Airbnb. I wanted it to go to people that can live here and to sustainably stay here. So we can look at things like zoning. We could talk about ways to have relief. But I think there's ways that we can work with groups like the North Shore CDC. There's different groups out there that are specializing in ways that we can work in sync with them. There's city-owned properties that we're taking a look at. But the long and short of it is there has to be a more comprehensive way that we are discussing these issues in a way that isn't all or nothing. It has to be a hybrid of different solutions. But there is no easy answer to any of this. So we have to work together.
Thank you, Chris. And now to Jamie.
Thank you. This is a loaded question, obviously. It's a hot question in the city. The city has been discovered, no secret. We as a council have to make it affordable for people first who live here. The existing constituents of our city who are just, a lot of people are just struggling to survive. Water and sewer rates that continue to increase. We increased the water and sewer rate 10% this past year, 10%. I had a constituent call me crying, couldn't pay their water bill. How do they survive? The basic necessity of life they can't pay for. So my first goal is to keep Gloucester affordable for people who live here. Beyond that, obviously we've talked about development. Development's going to happen. I talked to a constituent just to confirm, bought a house 40 years ago, paid $90,000. Today, the house is valued at over $1 million. Is anyone going to object to somebody getting what they can for their piece of property? But by achieving that, we just set the bar again. Somebody buys that, it's two-family house. They have to pay the mortgage. We can't tell them what they can charge for rents. They get what the market will bear. It's unfortunate, but we live in an area that has been discovered. It's unfortunate. People have to work harder. We as a council have to make it affordable for the people of Gloucester to live in our beautiful city. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. And Jeff, 2
Dick,
minutes.
could you repeat the question, please? For the benefit of the audience and myself, could you repeat the question?
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Residents have been concerned for years about the interrelated problems of one, affordable housing, and two, overdevelopment. In your view, how did we get into this predicament where so many of us living here and our children cannot afford to buy or rent in the overheated real estate property markets? There are many different policies and investments that could be made going forward. What are the measures on your list to take to address this problem to be taken by city government?
So one of my mentors was Abdullah Kambadi. I think everyone in this room probably knows or remembers him. And he would say, very similar to what you said, Jamie, would you sell your house for the price you paid for it? And it causes you to pause for a second because I don't think anybody would do that. So obviously, real estate agents, their ethics are to get the highest value they can possibly get. And I don't blame them. That's their job. And if someone sells their house for a high amount of money, I say congratulations. But it does raise the question of how does the next generation, and I'm looking at them in the back, the second to last row, my own kids, how are they going to be able to afford to live here? So this hits home, okay? On a personal level, I helped with Habitat for Humanity build 4 homes, two in Lynn, 1 in Lawrence, and then actually in Gloucester, we went up a floor. It's called Raise the Roof, and it was to add a unit, and it was at no cost to the homeowner because it was deed restriction applied to that. So this is something that's very important, very serious. What are some actions we can take? When I was in the council before, Councilor Kambadi and I started what was called the Zoning Ordinance Review Task Force. And I think, Frank, is that you in the back row? I think you served on it with us for a number of years. And the goal was to look at the zoning ordinance and say, what are the obstacles? What are the things that are going to make it harder for people to build? What can we streamline? How can we make it so that if you want to change something in your property, you don't need an attorney, and you can actually read the language because it's written sometimes by lawyers who then need lawyers to interpret it. So we started that, but we found out it was very complicated, very, very complicated. We met every Wednesday morning for a year, and we had some positive changes, and we need to do that again. Quick kinds of things we can do. I think we should look at tiny homes, right? You've got a 40,000 square foot lot. Well, if you have that kind of land zoning, you need to build a big building on it to justify those costs. But could you look at a number of smaller units, which then make it more affordable? We'd have to change the zoning code to allow that. I supported the cluster zone development ordinance, and that was to preserve some open space on your property where you could build maybe on to the side. And there have only been 2 applicants for that over the years. Lastly, I want to look at housing in the industrial park for workforce and housing, so people can live above, for example, at Cape Air Medical Center. I'm getting the flash in the paper.
Okay, great,
Sorry.
thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
And Jason, 2 minutes.
Yeah, zoning is a pendulum. We make decisions that we think are the right things to do for the next couple of years, 10 years, 20 years. That pendulum swings, and eventually the consequences of those decisions come to root. And we're at a stage where decisions that were made about 30 years ago have finally come to a point where they're now swinging back the other way. And I think we need to be a little bit more aggressive about re-examining our zoning code. I think there are ways that we can look at lot size, lot coverage. I mean, this is kind of in the weeds stuff, but we need to be a little bit more creative about how we allow housing, that we incentivize and focus on creating smaller homes. Not, if tiny homes are great, that's one option, but definitely smaller homes, because what we're allowing right now is the creation of very large, very expensive projects. And what that's doing is it's taking up land, it's pushing people out. I'm at that point in my life where I'm contemplating retirement. And yet I've got 22 and 25-year-old daughters who are contemplating their first homes and trying to figure out where they're going to live. We're at a point where we couldn't afford to downsize our house and move somewhere else in town, stay in town, and they can't afford to buy a house and move back to town. So we've really got ourselves into a pickle where we represent both ends of the spectrum here. And we need to find a way to allow people who live here, who've lived here for their 23 years or 123 years, to stay here if they so choose. And we're going to do that by re-examining zoning and how we use the land that we have available to us. There are going to be some changes. There have to be, because the status quo is choking the community. And we need to figure out a way to release that grip and find creative solutions to the zoning that we have to work with.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Val?
So housing prices are high because of low inventory. How many of you are disappointed that the Willow Rest and Hooks are no longer here in Ward 4? Raise your hand. Okay. The people there, the owners, whom we loved deeply, couldn't find help to help them run their business. Housing is such a huge issue right now. We have a waiting list at the Senior Gloucester Housing Authority of thousands of people right now for rent, 1,200 for rental units, just 2.5 years for normal units. There's no housing stock, and it's really unfortunate. We just can't get away with not doing something about it. I think what we need to do is reasonable. I think we have to get input from the community and the comprehensive plan to take some of the sting off of the polarization that people are feeling right now. I'm looking forward to that. But we have to be willing to take a step forward. And the zoning that we had planned for the TOD under 40A, Chapter 40, 3A, Chapter 40, yep. Give me 10 seconds on that slip, Doug. Thank you. But what we need to do is truly understand that zoning is for zoning matters. It's not for production. What they're asking us to do is zone for it. It's not to have to build 11 halyards and 2270 times 8 people. It's not that. So we have to get the facts straight and understand it from the beginning, because we haven't done that successfully. And when we can do that together as a community, we're going to have a better feel for how this can be reasonable, provided we are checking into the issues of parking and water and all the other things. So we have to make sure we're doing that, but we need to do that. And it's my time up. I want to talk more. Doug, I'm sorry.
You have some more time coming. Tony?
Yeah, we all know how we got here. I watched, for decades, housing people coming in and bidding over asking price, decades ago, more in the outlying areas, but I lived downtown in the building we had, 3-family. It increased the value of that property also. So there was a domino effect throughout as the more outlying areas, the more desirable for people of wealth could come in. So this is also, it's part of it, how we got there. It's a national issue. It's not local. It's a national issue. Let's face that. But, how can we, what can we do about it? So one of the, there's many issues that we need to do, and hopefully with the comprehensive plan, I would hope that the community can get together, and because you can't have affordable housing without building more housing, even if it is just deeded affordable, it's still more houses that's being built. So we have to allow that. The market has failed us. We can't, market rate housing is not going to get us out of this predicament. But where was I going with that? Anyway, today I did, like I said, so on the comprehensive plan, we need to use that to get the community together to decide who we are and who we want to be. Do we want to be a bedroom community, or do we want to be what we always have been? We also have to face the fact that our main industry that for 400 years sustained us coming out of the ocean is no longer a viable option to be our sole source. And so, geographically, we were great for that. Geographically, we're not so good for attracting other businesses. So we have to worry about that also. But I also want to say that, I put forward a short-term rental ordinance this year. I took it back so that we could rework it a little bit and bring it forward. And then also today, I was, all right, I'll talk about that later.
Thank you, Tony. And, yeah. So now, yeah, Chris.
I
You
started
began,
off.
okay. Okay, now we're on part B. So we're going to start with Jamie. In part B is, do you believe the city can and should play a role in encouraging net zero and environmentally friendly housing in the city?
To answer that question, no question, we should be. Technology has come a long way. Solar, geothermal, there are definitely areas that we can implement, but we also have to take into consideration your neighbors that are looking at what is being installed. So we have to do it with reason. But a green home is definitely favorable. I would support it. But most importantly, we have to keep the city affordable for the people, however they get there. Whether it's green technology or not green technology. We don't live in an area with neutral climate. We live in an area that's cold. And the end of this weekend, we're looking at snowflakes. This 70-degree temperature obviously is abnormal. We're going to be looking at 30-degree temperatures. We burn oil. We're not going to be heating homes with solar, but geothermal is an option. Thank you.
Jeff?
Thank you. So the city of Gloucester is a green-friendly community, and the state has now authored legislation. It's called the Stretch Code. That's going to be asked of every city and town if we want to adopt it, which would make building codes a little more stringent for people to build homes that are green-friendly. In anticipation of that, I put forward a piece of legislation that was passed just recently. It's called the Renewable Energy Ordinance for the city. So when you look at, for example, we have the new school building over in East Gloucester. It's solar ready, but there's no renewable energy as part of it. So the ordinance that I put forward and met with the Clean Energy Commission for 5 months, and the city council adopted it, says that any new city building, any renovation project requires that the city consider renewable energy in everything. And so I'm glad that passed, and it didn't always have everybody's support, but it's on the books now, and it would mean that if we were to regulate businesses and residents, they can't say, the city of Gloucester's not doing it, why are you making us do it? So that was the lead piece of that, and I'm glad to see that move forward. Thank you.
Jason?
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
absolutely, yes, we should be looking at every possible way and opportunity to adopt green technology. And Jeff said right. The state, we already have adopted the stretch codes. They're going to be renewed, and we have to make sure that the city continues to be a part of that program so that we use the latest technology, the latest expectations in terms of building to maximize that opportunity. Jamie's also right that we have to remember that this stuff all adds cost to these houses. So if we're simultaneously looking to try to build houses that are affordable, but we're putting too onerous expectations on becoming net zero too quickly, then we're at cross purposes. We're not able to build proper housing that people can afford, but we're also trying to be climate aware. And we're going to have to find that balance. But I think the stretch codes are a great opportunity to do that. And anytime the technology changes and we have the opportunity to review that, we should be doing that.
Great. Val?
So yes, of course, net zero refers to the balance between the amount of greenhouse gas that's produced and the amount that's removed from the atmosphere. And it's really important that anything that is part of this is backed by credible action. Today on the MMA website, there's a document that was just released yesterday by the climate chief from Massachusetts. And he predicts, and he's mandating, that net zero occurs by 2050. And I believe that we in Gloucester can do a better job in making some mini steps that are strong and progressive like we already have. We have a sustainability coordinator. We have people like our partners from Town Green, UMass Maritime Station. We've got the Clean Energy Commission, which is awesome, and the CARP that they've developed. And these are the subject matter experts that we can continue to partner with and come up with some mini steps so we can be progressive and maybe be ahead of the ball game, because we're good at what we do.
Thank you, Val. And Tony?
Yeah, so, we do participate in the stretch code. The new stretch code that I think we are gonna have to adopt is a whole lot, has a whole lot more meat into it, and which does come with, as has been spoken before, about expense. Gloucester did hire a sustainability coordinator this year. She's working very hard. Gloucester residents this year, by being in the aggregate electrical program, saved $4.5 million. So that's a lot of good that happened because of that position that's been brought. When I thought I had more time than I actually have, I signed up to become a heat coach, where people go into the home and tell people about how to convert to electrify, which means the heat pumps or the mini splits, as we all talk about. Most people are familiar with. And I think that in new construction, and particularly if we are involved with building any new affordable housing, we should be looking at these technologies that are no added expense, because you still have to install a heating source in that building.
Let me try and get through it as quickly as I can. Okay, so I was endorsed by the Sierra Club, and it's because I have a commitment to green. I actually helped brand the Gloucester Green brand way back when. And so I have a Tesla, I have a Prius, but there are considerations that come with that. And I want to echo Councilor O'Hara about the value back to our citizens. So one of the things I'm not a fan of is, for instance, you've heard discussion about getting rid of gas stoves. I don't want seniors to have to pay more money to get rid of a gas stove. I very much worry about that. I think there needs to be incentives from the federal and state government. They need to lead by example. And frankly, when it comes to like carbon tax and everything else, that's really a much bigger issue than Gloucester locally. So I worry about you as an individual making sure that you can get by day by day here. Our poor seniors are being priced out, as you've heard. So making sure that we're not doing anything onerous. But no one up here is going to tell you that you shouldn't be investing back into your environment. No one's going to tell you that we shouldn't be looking at coastal resiliency. We're all going to agree that we can do the very best for our community because it is a beautiful, scenic, amazing place. We can't have a blue economy if it's all polluted. So we're all going to agree that we can go green, but how we do it is going to be different.
Okay, thank you. So that wraps up the net zero green question. The next question is about city spending, and we're going to start with Jeff. A lot of demands for city capital projects have been arising recently. Work on private roads, new water lines to Russ Island, another consolidated elementary school, Plum Cove and Beaman, rebuilding the DPW building in a flood-prone area, cleaning up the creek at Good Harbor Beach, moving the compost pile at the entrance to Dogtown, and more. And the gorilla in the room is a potential $150 million bill for upgrading the wastewater treatment plant to secondary treatment standards. Adding this infrastructure burden is our unfunded pension system debt of approximately $150 million. What are your ideas for how we can manage our way through these competing demands, because we can't afford them all, on our tax base, and how would you propose to involve the public in setting priorities and not just approving one project at a time on a piecemeal basis? 2 minutes.
You said we have an hour each? Is that what you said for that question? Because there's a lot to that one.
Give the overview.
Yes, no, it's all good stuff. So back in 1999, the city started the Plan 2000 effort. It turned out to be Plan 2001 because it took us that long. And I was happy to be part of it. I think I would call myself a disciple of Janice Deludo. We had 59 public meetings, and I was the scribe at each of them. I didn't realize the lessons I was learning about public participation and setting priorities. I also served on what was called the Plan Implementation Committee. But the problem is that we have no matter how perfect the plan is, it has to survive multiple administrations. So since then, that was Bruce Toby that kicked it off. And we've had 5, 6 mayors since then. And obviously a mayor comes in and changes priorities, understandably. But there's got to be this sort of, the train's going to be moving forward on these infrastructure projects that we've been putting off for years after year after year as the price increases. It feels like we've been on a roller coaster sometimes when it comes to what is the most important priority today. We heard last night the mayor said that the sewer treatment plant is not $150 million. He said $200 million. We haven't yet seen anything come to the council on what the bill would actually be, so I can't speak authoritatively about what that cost is. But to go up, a year ago he said it was $100 million, 150, now $200 million. So we need to get a grasp on what that really looks like and what that entails. We have a capital improvement advisory board, which I think he's repopulated, that needs to look at long-term planning. So there isn't, again, a new mayor or same mayor, new council. We can't keep shifting priorities like that. Going a couple quick notes here. Okay, I think in city spending, I think fairness is the most important thing. Now, fair isn't always equal, right? I think we've learned that in lots of different ways already, even this presentation at the city council meeting last night. So we have to try to say, okay, what is fair to people who've paid for betterments out here in Lanesville? Should they be subsidizing other projects? Or do we say that wasn't done right then? And at some point we need to say, okay, what are we looking at going forward? There's got to be the context of what's the best thing for everybody. And that's hard to figure out, honestly, but listening is the key piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Jason, 2 minutes.
I'll just follow up on that and say that sometimes, unfortunately, the best thing for everybody, you can't get the best thing for everybody. There's too many divergent needs and issues. But, you know, good legislation is hard, and making decisions is hard. And too often, we've had councils and mayors who've done their best to avoid making those decisions. And as Jeff has alluded to, a project that was $100 million 2 years ago is $150 million last year, is $200 million next year. If we don't begin to act on these projects and prioritize them in terms of getting them done as soon as we possibly can and in the most financially responsible way, they're just going to keep doing this. And the problems that we're inheriting now are not were problems that were 20, 30 years down the road before we even, most of us were even aware of that there were problems. So we've got to stop kicking the can down the road. I know that sounds kind of trite, but the fact of the matter is that, you know, if you have a leak in your roof, you fix your roof, you don't get a bigger bucket, okay? And we've been spending our time getting a bigger bucket. So, you know, I hope that the community, the CPI involves the whole issue of infrastructure priorities and improvements. Our roads are a mess, but not necessarily because we haven't been paying attention to the roads. The roads downtown are, generally speaking, pretty good. Those are public roads. We're dealing with a private road issue, and I think we may have come to a place where we may be offering some respite to some people on private roads in terms of trying to get those things done. Jeff is right. There is a fairness issue, but there is a practicality issue that sometimes we have to make decisions that are going to cost everybody, even if they only seem to benefit a few. Ultimately, most of those decisions benefit the entire community. Clean water, good roads, decent, making sure that we're not polluting the harbor with sewage. I mean, these things don't necessarily feel like they're affecting you on a daily basis, but they are affecting the entire community. We have to be
Thank
mindful
you,
of
Jason.
that.
Yep. 2 minutes, Val.
So I'd like to begin by reminding people that we are now fully staffed with our Capital Advisory Board. And one of the things that we haven't done in a long time is have the Capital Advisory Board meet with the City Council and administration and start talking about this in front of the public, because that would be really helpful, because that's an important board that we haven't been using effectively over the last many years. So that's one of my thoughts about involving the public. We also need to be reminded that our bond rating is excellent. And if you ever want to see a work of art, you should see what the annual document is that we get and all the things that we are doing in Gloucester. Because one of the things that we don't hear enough of is all the great things we're doing. We always hear about the things we're not doing. But right here, I'm looking at a list of 13 major loan initiatives, many with grants that helped us, that has occurred in the city from May 22nd to April 23rd of this year. So there are many things that we've been doing and doing well, but can we do better? Of course. Do we have a lot in front of us? Yes. Aged infrastructure, all of these matters are really hurting us. But I think if we can work together and to keep improving our bond rating, our CFO and our auditor, they are so good at doing what they need to do in order to make the least possible impact on taxpayers' dollars by staging different loan orders at different times, like a mortgage works. And they really do an excellent job. And I'm proud of their hard work. Do look at that document. It is really very important that you see it. It's like a hidden paycheck. Lots of things that we're doing that people just don't know, all the things we're doing, because all you hear are the bad things that aren't happening. There are a lot of really good things that are happening. Did I go over?
Yes.
I didn't have my glasses on.
No, wait.
you, Val.
I'll interrupt you next time. More.
I thought it said 30 seconds. I'm
Tony,
sorry.
I forgot the question after.
That's a stalling technique, I know it is.
You want me to repeat it?
No,
gonna put my
unless the audience wants it. But, we're talking about all the burdens, all the financial burdens that we have here. And they're not insignificant. And we need to have, serious people sitting on the city council who oversee and approve some of the, an awful lot of these things as they come. Well, all of them when they come. That's one of our main purposes, actually, when they comes from the mayor, the mayor's office and the administration. The sewer treatment plant, we could have had it for free in the 70s, but, we can't go, we don't have, a Tesla outside that can take us back to the 70s. So, not a Tesla, a DeLorean. But we, these are things that we have to face. There's also, use the comprehensive plan. We need to listen to the citizens, and they need to know what are our priorities? What do we fix? What do we not fix? And, people talk about tightening the belt and just spend less. Well, there's a cause and effect. Who do we lay off? Which firemen, which police officers, how many, fire stations do we close in order to pay these things off? So, there is a cause and effect. You have to do this intelligently and very thoughtfully in order to get through on this. You really have to be honest about what it means to take money from one part of the budget and place it into another, because you're gonna have a loser on the other side. And sometimes that loser is going to be the citizens, and that's just not okay. Do I have more time? You want me to?
You have a half a minute left.
I have a half a minute? All right, well, let's get to the sewer treatment plant. I already told you, if you want somebody who can oversee that whole thing going, I'm the one with the most experience on that. Jeff talked about the PERC, the Planning and Implementation Committee for the Plan 2001. I sat on that for several years. So I understand, and hopefully this comprehensive plan, everybody here and everybody in the city will get involved in that to help us with our priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And Chris, 2 minutes.
Thank you. So I want to echo Councilor Worthley in that we did have a lot of change with the change of administration, change of mayors, change of plans, but we do need our North Compass. We do need to figure out our exact priorities. And the theme that you've heard from me tonight is communication and making sure that all voices are being heard. So it's not just saying from Mount on high, we're going to do this just because we said so. It has to be a two-way conversation where we say, this is a priority. We think we should do it in this order. What do you think? Public. And invite that conversation to be a two-way conversation, because this list, to Councilor Worthley's point, is so long. I mean, I could talk about Rust Island somewhat selfishly because I live there now alone for an hour. So in my opinion is this, by the way, on another thing. When it comes to private roads, we have about 540 private roads. We have 230 some odd public roads. That is very lopsided. Now, I will tell you, having served at the pleasure of the mayor in Haverhill and Salem, what they would do is they would sit down, the at-large, the ward councilors would sit down and say, we're going to pick 5 of our worst roads, and we're going to convert them without a betterment, by the way. I don't necessarily love betterments. I know Councilor Nolan and Councilor Gilman have done a great job of advocating for that, but some people don't have the financial means to fix all the potholes on their streets. They just don't have the means to do that. I think that's the city's obligation. If you have working water and sewer, I think it's the city's obligation to take care of those streets. That shouldn't be a radical thing to say. To Councilor Gross's point, that also means, though, we have to give the DPW more money and support and resources. Where's that going to come from? We are fortuitous that the federal and state government are now working together to get us more for the bigger items. Secondary sewer, clean water is a big, big issue of mine. But I do think that we have to have conversations about priorities and the ways that we get there. But I feel confident that rising tides lifts all ships. We can do this together. And I want you to believe in leaders who can actually get the word out to get it done. Not just to be naysaying, not to have fights amongst one another, not to have fights at city councils, but to actually get it done together, folks.
Thank you, Chris. And finally, Jamie,
Thank
2
you.
minutes.
Thank you. The mayor of the city of Gloucester controls the majority of the spending. He or she hires, fires employees, sets pay scale, bonuses, sign-on bonuses. That's the mayor. We do not control that. Coach Belichick of the Patriots sometimes has been said taking people off the scrap heap and seeing what you can get out of that person. A lot of times he has been successful. Mr. Jimmy Destino, the past CAO, said the city of Gloucester has some of the richest employment contracts in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Do we need to be paying the employees to hold that classification? I don't think so, but we achieve that. And that's just plain wrong, because you are paying for those people. And they're all, mind you, they are all servants of the city, as I am a servant, and all the city councils, we are servants of the people. So we, the council, do not have a whole lot of control over the budget. We see the budget. It's typically reviewed in a couple of meetings. Very little public participation. What I can suggest, we have a good audience, but the people at home, participate in city government. Show up at the meetings, particularly the budget. Look at the budget. We react on what you people want. If no one shows up, guess what happens? The mayor gets what the mayor wants. But if the people show up, we listen. I can tell you, we will all listen, but very few people show up. We meet in a city hall. We met Tuesday night. I can tell you, it was warm outside. I was cold. It's a very uncomfortable environment. People show up at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever the meeting begins, and they may be full of vinegar to fight, but after 20 minutes, they've had enough, go home. The hybrid has worked tremendously. You look at the numbers, people participate. But I ask people, the city, to get involved in your city government. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Okay, now we're the final question. This is 2 minutes each.
7 seconds each.
My glasses on.
2 minutes each, and we're going to try to hold you to that because we're creeping into the 8 o'clock news here. So 2 minutes each, and we're going to go Jason and right around through Jeff.
All right. 2 minutes starts now.
Pitch.
Pitch. You know, I'm approaching 60. I know I don't look it, but I first got into politics because I was concerned about where my kids were living and what was happening to the community, especially around education. And that was 15 years ago. 15 years on down the road, I'm now concerned about where my kids are going to live and whether they can be here. And I look at every issue that comes to the council through the lens of how is this going to impact my children's Gloucester 20 years from now? Are they going to be able to continue to live here and have their families here like I did with mine? And that is really my guiding star. I want to know, how is this going to impact their lives? Because at the end of the day, 20 years from now, I'm not going to be here. You know, a lot of us aren't going to be here, but the consequences of our actions are definitely going to be here. I often take a contrary point of view sometimes, even with issues that people think that I'm all for, because they think the important thing in our process at the council level is to dig as deeply as we can into every issue, to learn as much as we can about what's happening, why it's happening, how it's happening, and should it be happening, and then vote accordingly. Sometimes that means that, you know, I've had people ask me, I thought you were going to vote against that, but you voted for it. And I said, well, yeah, because I needed to find out if what we were looking at was really what we were looking at. And that is really, I think, it goes so fast, the job of the city council is to really dig into it on your behalf, to find out what's going to be decided in your name. And that's what we do. I've been on the council for 6 years now, 4 as a ward councilor, 2 now as at large. I'm asking for one of your 4 votes. I do my homework, I work hard, and I really try to make sure that I understand the issues that we're dealing with. And I hope that shows in our results.
So why do you want to vote for me on November 7th? I feel like I can hit the ground running as an at-large counselor. I am so ready to be an at-large counselor. I loved being a ward counselor, but I'm ready to get to the next step because I truly believe that a lot of the stuff that we need to do is legislate, work with the state, work with our state officials, and do more for the city. Even something as simple as increasing the amount of Chapter 90 we get for public road repair. It is pathetic that we only get $680,000 a year for all of our public roads. That is not even close to what we need. We need more like 1.6 million. And that's a problem with our infrastructure. I get this stuff. I understand how important it is. I know how to legislate. I have really good relationships with Ann Margaret and Bruce. I'm on the MMA WEMO group with all of the women elected officials in a leadership role. I learned so much by MMA. We have to get over the bridge. We have to know what other municipalities are doing. We need to do best practice. We need to be strategic. We can't just sit in our little cocoon and then just go to our meetings and see what pops up from administration. We need to be leaders, and we're not doing that as well as we could be. So I'm ready to hit the ground running. Something else I want to say is that I held the first budget meeting, pre-budget meeting here in this room. Thank you to Val Nelson helping me set it up. And we actually strategized and asked questions in terms of what our budget priorities were. And I documented all the results, gave it to the mayor, gave it to Jill Cahill, put it on the agenda so the public could see, shared it with all of the members of the city council. And that is how you listen to people. You don't wait until it's penned. You don't wait till you get the book from the mayor and then it's already too late. You do this type of searching proactively, listening to the taxpayers. I'm good at that. I ask you for your vote on November 7th, 2023. I'm the only woman running for at-large, and I'm 4th on the ballot.
Why do I do this? I do it because I was taught to do this. You have to give back. It's your responsibility. It's your responsibility to be involved. It's your responsibility to help solve problems. And I take it very seriously. I'm just going to give you one example of something that happened today of how I'm working for you. Is, you know, everybody talks about the adjusted median income and how that affects our housing locally and that we are lumped in with Boston. Well, I called and spoke with Congressman Moulton's office, set up a meeting with the Housing Urban Development, and had a conversation with them, the mayor's office, community development, the grants administrator for the city, and 4 members of the head of HUD, of Housing and Urban Development, and their regional director, their field office director. And it was very enlightening because there's pluses and minuses to being involved in that. It allows several things, but it also, one thing we found out is there is opportunity for us to locally affect how that works. So it was, it's a case-by-case basis, but it was something that we just didn't, we all complained about it, but I figured I had to find out because the people needed to know. That's just one thing that happened today, and I constantly look for these reasons to work for you and to make Gloucester work better. So please vote for me on November 7th. I'm number 5 on the ballot. I always get a crap placement. Thank you.
All right, folks, once again, I am Chris Carranza, and the S in Carranza stands for Streets, Schools, and Seniors. Hopefully you've heard that message across the community because I've been out there talking to all of you this summer, this fall, and trust me, Gloucester, you don't have to worry about what they're thinking. They will tell you. So people have been telling me about their concerns around their infrastructure, especially workforce housing. But one of the biggest things that you've heard across from all of us tonight is how do we make sure we actually engage in participatory government that works for you? Who is advocating for the taxpayer? Who is making sure you're getting the best bang for your buck? A vote for Chris Carranza on November 7th is a vote for good government and a person that wants to do good for you always. So I think that you've heard from all of us tonight. I just want to say thank you to the organizers here again. I want to thank everyone up on the stage because we have to start with gratitude again, folks. The nastiness has got to come to an end. I am sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of lawsuits. I'm sick and tired of misinformation, and I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. So don't keep investing in the people that are into mischief and misinformation. Vote for people who give a damn. And by the way, we'll be living here a lot longer too. So I think that our best future together starts today with some fresh leadership. So please, I ask you for one of your 4 votes, number 4 in the ballot, Chris Carranza. Thank you very much. Number 3 on the ballot. Sorry.
Or number 2. 2 is also good. 2 is also good.
5, 3. All right.
Thank you. Obviously, being a counselor for 8 years, and prior to that, I've been very much involved in the city of Gloucester. People of Lanesville know it from years ago when the fire stations were closed, and you had neighbor Bridget Clary who passed away in her home on a Sunday night. I've stood up for the people for a long time before a city councilor, and I will continue to stand up for the people. There are so many people in the city that unfortunately, and God gifted me, my parents, thank God, they rest in peace, but they raised me to stand up for people. My mother was a huge advocate of standing up for people, and I continue to do that and will do that. There are so many people that don't have the intestinal fortitude. They call me, as I mentioned, the water and sewer. It's horrible what's going on in the city. This is our city, your city. If you want somebody who will stand up for you, obviously you're looking at him. I don't. Obviously, I haven't cracked a smile yet tonight because this is serious business. $150 million of your money, your tax dollar money. We signed off on $300,000 to replace 2 grease traps at the Gloucester High School and O'Malley School. Guess what? They don't even cook anymore. I got a communications fell from the heaven the following day from someone very high up in the city. Jamie, you were right on in voting against it. Myself and Tracy O'Neill voted against it. Obviously, it succeeded, so you spent $300,000 on grease traps that the city didn't need. Paving's out of control. The other day, Paul Muniz, Brightside Ave, you've driven Brightside Ave, it's like a thoroughfare. When he moved in, it was a good road. He admitted it in 1998. Today, it's full of potholes. Why? Because the city doesn't elect to fix potholes. You have to have people who will stand up for you. As I stood up for Fatima Silva and Tracy O'Neill stood up for Fatima Silva, I'll take the punches. I don't care. Actually enjoy it. If the mayor wants to try to beat me up, have at it. I don't care.
I think I see a little smile there.
No, I take this very seriously. She lost her house as well as the people on Western Ave.
We get it.
Okay?
Yeah.
This is serious business. You want somebody who will treat the city as a serious item? Throw a vote my way. Thank you.
And finally, Jeff.
So I agree with a lot of things that Councilor Harris said, but I'm going to smile because I think there's a lot of good things that are happening in our city. And I believe in the law of attraction. If we focus on the positives, we get more positives. So I take this job seriously. I love our community. I hope that's very clear. I'm a disciple, as said, of Janice Toludo. I just want to say, on April 11th, 2022, request to the mayor from Councilor Worthley, request the mayor to initiate the new master plan or update the last master plan. I'm thrilled that he's doing it, and I think that that's going to be an opportunity for us to really engage. We had over 1,500 volunteers participate in that, and we really got a good snapshot of what the people were thinking and wanting for our community, and we need to do that again. And we need to be a little more robust. It can't just be a Facebook post, right? We should be using the thing at the Rotary, all the signage on there. We should say, meeting tonight. We should be doing door-to-door like I did in 1999, 2000, to invite people to come to these community master plan meetings because it works. So I want to say, after I served 4 years in the city council, what I did each time after that, and I think Councilor Gilman and O'Hara were part of it, I conducted a new council orientation, volunteered to do it, because I do know the city charter, I know the zoning code, I know the code of ordinances, and I know how to lead, I know how to legislate, I know Robert's Rules of Order. All those things are helpful in a new city council. Now, in 2024, there may be up to 5 new city councilors. I'd be happy to help each of them get up to speed. They don't vote my way, there's no quid pro quo, but understanding all the intricacies of being a city council. I've worked with each of the councilors on here, and Chris Sickeranza as well, when he was in the mayor's office, on ways to collaborate, to work together. So if you vote for any of them, a vote for me means they have an ally. They have someone who's going to try to be helpful to them. I want to thank my 2 co-campaign managers, Jude and Lilas, in the back there. So you see all these signs up, you see all the door-to-door. They're pushing me and they're working hard on the campaign. They might be for hire for next election. I'm Jeff Worthley. I'm from Gloucester. I'm for Gloucester, and I believe in the goodness of Gloucester. I'm first on the ballot, so when you see Worthley, pick that one and then vote for it. Then pick your next 3. I got to work on how to say it. We pick Worthley and then vote for your next 3. Thank you very much.
All right, so this, we now get to the audience question segment of the evening. And we're going to, we have someone who's always eager here, so.
So I have so they're going to answer 1 minute each, and we'll take questions from the floor, and I will you call on them, and I will run over with the microphone.
Thank you. I would like to thank Tony. I knew I had read about your approach on the AMI, so thank you for looking into that. I hope there's some success there. The densest area of our city is the downtown. And currently, according to the state, we're at 7 units per acre of density. That's what the current build out is. We know that the state is requiring 15 units per acre. At 2-family by right, we are currently at approximately 17 units per acre. So we meet that requirement, but we have to go to 3 units per acre, 3 units or more. Has anybody done even a back of the envelope calculation of what the minimum 3 units would bring us to density? And is there a maximum cap density, and what is it?
So we're going to give this one to Jason.
You're not going to get this in a minute, I'll tell you that for sure. The thing to really understand about the 3A law, it is zoning for capacity, not for production, okay? It is as if we're starting with a blank slate with all the various lot lines out there. What could be built if you put together a by right zoning ordinance for multifamilies? It doesn't mean that you can make a 1 acre lot requirement. You have to deal with what you have. And that's all that we're dealing with here at this point. And no, we don't have a back of the envelope calculation. We haven't been able to have that conversation yet. We did have it during the amendment discussions, and we looked at it. If everyone who could possibly want to do a development took advantage of that, we were looking at probably about 500 more units in the entirety of all of the R5 and Ward 2 and Ward 3. The idea that we're going to be mandated to put 2,270 units in Gloucester downtown is a falsehood. It is wrong.
All right, so, oh, 1 minute. Okay, does anybody want to take advantage of your 1 minute each on this question?
Oh, you mean it's optional? Come on, make them answer it. Come on.
Val?
So I serve on P&D, so this particular matter is really near and dear to me. We've attended some outside sessions on this at the state level. We've attended quite a few webinars, and everything that Councilor Grow said is accurate. This is all about capacity and not production. So when they throw these numbers out, it doesn't mean that's the number we have to meet. That's not how many we're going to have. What it is, it's telling you that we have to zone to allow that. So if you have 20 houses like this on a street, how many residents do you think would take advantage of converting from 2 to 3 family by right? How many do you think would probably do it? Maybe 1 or 2? I mean, why? A lot of people don't want to do it because they're happy in their home. They don't know if they want to do it, right? So I think we just have to understand that what we're looking at is again capacity, not production, and that's a misunderstanding we've had.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I know the question was, what was the question?
And 3 units per acre. I'm sorry.
No, I don't.
3 family, what would the downtown R5 zone be minimum capacity?
On what?
Capacity, not production.
On all lots or on lots that are compliant or with height and, what, there's so much goes into that I don't know if I can answer it. And I look forward to the comprehensive plan, hopefully having some information on this because that's a really in-depth question, but I have to agree, the law doesn't say we have to build anything, but it gives the opportunity to build it. And so there we need to make sure that if it is jammed down our throat, that it gets legislated so to the maximum benefit for Gloucester. During the comment period for this, I crafted the letter that the city council sent in for the comments, pointing out, some of the pitfalls relating to Gloucester. And then I had a very lengthy conversation with the architect of it from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Is that what it's called? Housing and Economic Development at the MMA, Mass Municipal Association Conference. And it was, a little bit of headbutting, but we had a long conversation, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the experts come up with.
Thank you, Patty, for the question. No, I can't give you an answer to that question, okay? That's the straight up answer. I know that you've done your own homework, Patty, on this. I'm curious to sit down with you to see from your perspective exactly what you're looking for, because I haven't had that chance to have that conversation yet directly with you, but you've told me you've created a presentation on this, so I can't wait to see what that's all about, number one. Number two, we're 400 years old, folks. It's no surprise. We've had the same population, 30,000 people. That's not a mysterious fact. That's because we had more density. We had more people living in 2 and 3 family homes. And by the way, we didn't have these big parking requirements either. When I was in Haverhill, we waived that. So we have to have interesting conversations about ways that we can look at density. But I'm going to be the only one that's not a politician up here. No, I don't know how to answer your back of the envelope question. That's very nuanced, but I'm okay with saying I don't know and I'm willing to learn.
Thank you, Chris. Tony? Jamie.
Thank you. Patty, it's obviously a very, very difficult question to answer, but the bottom line is we add additional dwelling units. The average person consumes 105 gallons of water a day. And with that said, a year ago, we had a water crisis. We built additional dwelling units, 105 gallons a day. The 2,270, that's a number that, as Councilor O'Neill says, that's a minimum. Do extrapolate out the gallons that will be used. We had a water shortage a year ago. You like sitting in traffic. We like to talk about, it's going to be a walking community. Well, that's nice in the summertime, but we know summer will end in another week. It will be cold, and people will be driving. So we have to look at the reality. We have to get emergency vehicles around. They can't move. We live in a city 400 years old. The roads that we drive on today, 400 years ago, were go paths. There's no place for cars to go. So we have to consider, we build, how are we going to get people around? Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. I'm actually going to agree with Chris in that I don't know either, and we have a lot of work to do. I've mentioned to you many times, Patty, I consider you the 10th counselor because of how much you pay attention, how quickly you're on top of things and bringing to our attention. Thank you for that. So let's just be clear on a couple things, though. I'm going to kind of answer the question you didn't ask. What's sort of our plan with complying with Chapter 3A? The language is clear that it's to zone for a minimum of 2,270 units. And I agree, it's not a mandate to build. I think that's really clear. We're not saying the city's going to build these units, but we also do get what we zone for. So we have to be very thoughtful, cautious, measured, proactive, right? So, for example, I love this community development plan to factor these things in, but it's not going to be done in time, right? The community development plan is going to take a year or longer. And if at that point they say, okay, here's the suggested changes, we'll submit it to the council in October of 2024, we're not going to have public hearings quickly enough to comply with this ordinance. So we need to lead that sooner. Thank you.
Do we have some other questions?
I'm a Gloucester homeowner and a resident, and my question is, even though you're talking about capacity increases and no production increases, the production is going up. We live downtown, we see it firsthand. We're being impacted on all fronts. Traffic, more increased traffic. The population of Gloucester doubles in the summer, and now it's going to get even more with all the housing boom that's happening downtown. And two things that really worry me as a homeowner and resident in Gloucester is the quality of life. Actually, many things, but I'll boil down to three. Quality of life, like, being able to live in this, quiet environment where there's no constant noise and sirens and drunk people walking around. The other thing is traffic. Traffic is a bane on our existence. We can't get in a good day in the summer, or actually the other day, to YMCA crossing, Gloucester crossing, without sitting in traffic for 25 minutes. That's like unacceptable. And that's only going to get worse with all the housing production that's already happening downtown. So I think that you should not dismiss that. We want this council, whoever gets elected, to keep in mind. Yes, I have a question. To keep in mind that the traffic is only going to get worse. And what's your vision for traffic? And also, is this 20 Main Street housing that's been a big hot issue behind our house, that's going to cut down trees. So there's less greenery that you see there. And that's going to create heat island, make us really exposed to heat more and more every year. So what's your vision for traffic and for making Gloucester greener, the downtown Gloucester greener, striking the balance between the housing production that is happening and, protect us from heat?
Start with Val.
So one of the things that we really need to do downtown, and I know the mayor's office is looking into this right now, using some ARPA grants, is coming up with a parking solution. So I think that is important. I think it needs to happen. And I'm certainly sympathetic to folks that live particularly on that end of Main Street where parking is difficult. So I'm confident and I'm looking forward to seeing that. and what comes out of it. In terms of green space, that's part of the open space plan. We were all last night at City Hall, many of us, almost 100 people, and we were talking about green space and how we take particular land and make sure that we have enough green space. Right now, we're looking at what's going to happen with the East Gloucester School when it's demolished and what type of playground we want there and how it's going to look. And that's a very collaborative effort right now that's going on. So I'm impressed with that. And I think my time is up, so I'm sorry.
So the parking study that's being done right now is being done around the business district. And I think what we need to do is we need to, as part of the comprehensive plan, convince the administration that they need to stretch out into the neighborhoods. I, for several years, lived right in that same neighborhood, and I know that parking is traffic everywhere. I try to get out of East Gloucester, in the summertime. But it's, we need to understand that the parking issue adds to quality of life. And so that has to be taken seriously, and hopefully that will be addressed in the comprehensive plan. I'm going to do my best to convince the administration that we need to stretch that out into the neighborhoods.
Thank you for your question. Thank you for coming out and asking it. And, I used to live downtown on Cleveland Street off of Maplewood Ave. And I would participate in doing some community cleanups, making sure that the area was safe. But I hear you. And I think that when you're talking about quality of life and relative to transportation, does everyone here have a smartphone? I think they do. Did you download the CADA app? Because for $3, you can go anywhere you want in this city. So we're not talking about the alternative means of transportation that nobody's using because no one's been communicating that we have it. Why is that? I've been focusing on communications about the tools that we have right now that we're not using. So we need to do a better job of making sure that when it comes to placemaking, that people actually know what the tools are. When it comes to development, it actually is something that if we're taking away trees, we should be replanting them. That's an easy initiative that we should be doing, that I'm going to make sure as a councilor we're going to be doing a lot of replanting of trees to make sure on that front. But when it comes to seasonality, we have to make sure that we're looking at seasonal data such that we can go to the state and advocate for the monies and funds that we need. And we're not doing that now. We need to do that.
Again, as I've mentioned, 400-year-old city, roads that go past. The most important, and I've said it more than once tonight, is everyone needs to participate. No one wants to see this traffic, but no one shows up at the ZBA meetings, the planning board meetings. Things go through. If people participate, this city will be a different city. I can't stress that enough. People at home participate. Patching the roads, the private roads, that's allowed by state law, but people do not sound off enough. To answer your question, we need to stand up for the residents. These developments, the developers are coming in, they're coming in to make money. They don't care what they leave behind, but they leave behind a lot of headaches. People, Chris mentions CADA, that's a nice reality that's out there, but how many people travel on CADA? Most of the buses are going around empty. It's not reality. People drive. We need to, we can't build without having parking spaces. We can't build without having a road structure that will support those vehicles. Thank you.
Yes. First, thank you. I can't see her, but I want to let her know that I empathize with your situation. And I do understand there's been some notification questions that weren't properly received or sent. And so you have my empathy on that as well. I consider that we live downtown. I live right off Maplewood Ave with my two children. When I first bought the house, we had to shelter in place because there was a gas company, Matheson Gas, that had some sort of gas leak and no one knew what it was. And I worked with the fire chief to have wind socks put on top of these buildings so that we would know at least which direction the wind was going when there was something like that happening. But you have my empathy on the extra construction. I cannot believe downtown this summer had construction project after construction project, including city projects. And I know there's an ordinance that we're working on to say that the street can't be open during certain months unless it's emergency work. But I can't imagine how hard it is. I like the idea of planting a tree for every time a tree comes down. I know the mayor had an initiative to have 400 trees planted for this year. We went to the first one that was planted at City Hall. I don't know when the others are. That 60 seconds goes by fast. My number is on my brochure. You can call me anytime. Thank you.
Tracy's got a question.
Jason, you didn't get to say anything, did you,
Oh.
Jason?
I'll make it quick.
Okay.
Here.
Just a minute.
Trying to save you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Very quickly. I appreciate everything you've said, and I agree with you. I think Jamie is correct. We have the Comprehensive Planning Initiative. That really is only effective if people from all over the city, and I really point to wards 2 and 3 in this particular case because there tends to be less involvement, unfortunately, from those wards. And we need more involvement from those wards. So when you're asked to participate, bring up the issues that you want to bring. There is something that we have to be realistic about, in that we cannot deal with a housing crisis without building some housing. Okay, and I personally believe that the entire city should bear some responsibility for this because it's a citywide issue, and we need to find a solution that doesn't just impact downtown, but is spread throughout all of our districts, and that's what I'm going to be working for.
Thank you. Excuse me. Hold on. This question, excuse me, this question is for Council Gilman and Council Gilman only.
Objection to a question that is just for me. I don't think that that's fair to the rules of debate.
Ask your question. I'll monitor.
No.
I'll
So
monitor
no.
who answers it, Tracy.
Then don't ask it.
Okay, she's not going to ask. Okay, good.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So, me being one of the youngest people in this room right now, I kind of felt like I had to ask a question, and I wrote this like literally just a minute ago. So, do you believe that large apartment complexes are the answer to affordable housing, and do you think building homes on smaller properties are the answer? If large apartment complexes are the answer, where do we build them, and where do we get the money to build them?
So this is starting with Tony. No, Val did.
Oh, no problem.
What do you mean by that?
So good question, Jude. The city doesn't build housing. It all depends upon, large apartment buildings sometimes are appropriate in certain areas, and some places they're not. What was the other part of that question? Could you refresh me? Oh, smaller lots? I think less than smaller lots. What we need to think about building more affordable homes rather than maximizing on the lots. We need to think about, let's build houses that will work for families that are moderate. We don't need to have such expensive homes that have, every imaginable a luxury in it. We need to build homes that people just can live in and have them be priced that way. So that would be, I don't know how we can, I don't think we can zone it, but if we can try to make the city be more compatible for that and emphasize that. So I don't have any answer on the tall buildings on where they would go, but.
So thank you for the question. It's nice to see a young person stand up and ask a question. Thank you for that. So I just want to dispel one rumor right now. Halyard, I believe, is the third largest revenue maker for the city. I'm going to say that again. The third largest tax revenue for the city. So we shouldn't be demonizing things. Good people live there. I know the people that live there. They vote, they participate, they get involved. And I think that it's something that we shouldn't be demonizing per se. Okay, everyone has a right to live somewhere. They have a right to actually have a fair rent They have a right to participate in this community. So when we say these kinds of things, I just want to be clear. It's not those people, it's all of us, okay? So let's just set the right tone right off the bat on that, okay? That being said, we have an affordable housing trust. We should be using that to incentivize ways to get North Shore CDC and Harbor Homes working with the right community partners who can activate success on those different parcels. I like Council Worthley's plan about looking into tiny homes. But what we can't do is demonize those versus us and stuff like that. We all deserve housing. We all deserve housing. And please, can we keep the chatter down? It's very distracting over here. It's very distracting, I have to say. Very distracting.
Thank you. And for those at home, that question was posed by Jude Wordley, Jeff Wordley's oldest child. Jude is class president at Gloucester High School freshman class, I believe. Takes after his father. Great question, Jude. As you mentioned, you like obviously driving around with your father, and do you like sitting in traffic? Not particularly, exactly. Well, neither does anyone else. So we as a city have to consider that. It's nice to build, it's nice to supply homes, but if people can't move around, what good is it? And particularly in times of emergencies, I've already mentioned it. People, the rescue squad is out nonstop. They need to get from point A to point B. We have to look at the reality of building. It's just plain and simple. But thank you very much for the question, Jude. That was a great question. And good luck with your class presidency.
You need to recuse yourself.
I'm just going to say, first, thank him for asking a question. Thanks, Jude. But if I were to plant a question, that would have been the one I would have planted. So that was completely unique to this. So I'd be happy to answer it if people trust that I will be sensitive. Thank you. Firstly, there are places in the city where we could go up that you're not blocking views. Now, I'm not suggesting that we spot zone, but if we were to go higher and we did that everywhere, then someone's going to say their view has been lost and that changes the character of the neighborhood. I've been pushing to look at, for example, the Cape Ann Medical Building, for example, in the industrial park. Could we look at workforce housing where we say, okay, there's nobody's view who's going to be blocked, right? I think it was Bob Gillis who told me the reason why this worked in Beverly is because they worked on housing in an industrial park. There were no neighbors to complain, basically. And I'm not suggesting that people don't have a right to complain, but if you just say we're going to go up higher, they're blocking a wind turbine? They're not blocking any view. So that would be perfect an example because they're closed at 5, people are leaving, people coming home from work, and they're living above those buildings. Now, there's building code issues. That's an example where a higher building would not have any impact. I do think, though, that smaller homes and incenting that through our zoning code makes more sense than anything because we could put a house where our garage is because it's an accessory dwelling unit that passed a few years ago. Anyway, you're not the youngest person in the room because your sister's next to you and she's a year younger.
Jason.
My answer, Jude, and thank you for asking it, is yeah, there probably are places where we can put higher buildings. Halyard is absolutely perfectly fine where it is. There's also ways that we can manage lot size use and how we use and how we authorize the use of your how much land you can use on your property and incentivize the creation of multiple units in order to utilize more of your land. So you're giving incentive to create density within existing property. So there are definitely things, these are all things that we have to be looking at. And I think for the next year as we're going through the CPI, but also just in general, we need to be thinking very, very much out of the box and creatively in terms of how do we utilize what we have? How do we accept that organizations like Habitat and Action, the apartment complexes downtown, they fit in very nicely downtown and they work. There are places where this can work and we should encourage it where it does.
Jude, not only are you president of your class now, you really play a mean trumpet. So we appreciate that. You're very talented. What I just wanted to say is in terms of high rises, neighborhood character, not sure how well those would be accepted here in Gloucester. I do want to make sure that we're all aware that we have a cluster home policy, an ordinance, and that gives people an opportunity to maximize their open space, but maximize the amount of housing as well. So they can be very successful as an alternative. So if you read the Housing for All questionnaires that we all filled out, there's one question that actually talks about that. So I'd encourage you all to read everyone's answers, and you can compare those of us who filled out the survey. So thank you.
So maybe one more question. Is there one more question for anybody? One, here we go. Martin.
As a citizen and very interested in citywide conversations, especially amicable ones, what I would really like from the civic leadership is the opportunity to try to sort out what are the nice to have things in Gloucester versus the have to have things. And there are innumerable nice to have things, but the have to have things, some of those are tough. So I would look forward to leadership to bringing that into the public conversation so that we can do the things that we really have to do. Well,
Have to have things.
yeah, certainly a prominent one is a sewage treatment plant. That's not on anybody's list, but what are you going to do to bring forward the have to have questions?
Thank you for the question. You've heard from me tonight that I believe it starts with communication, and then it also starts equally with respect. And we had a big question earlier that listed a good quarter of the major infrastructure problems and situations we have in front of us. But to your point, there's different ways that we can get it done. There's the comprehensive plan, there's the master plan, but plans can't collect dust. They have to be activated. And it takes, as you've heard from me tonight, two-way conversation such that you can actually enable that success for the short term and for the long. There's ways to tie into grants. There's ways to tie in with your state delegation, your federal delegation. And I'm encouraged that we can actually have the right group of people to get stuff done. But, making sure that your voice is heard starts with the fact that you have to have leadership that's willing to have a fair conversation about the practicalities of it. Because to Jamie O'Hara's point, Councilor O'Hara's point, there's going to be consequences if you move money around. So, it's just about that. A balanced budget has to have that word, balance. So I appreciate the question because it all starts with that word, respect. Thank you.
The projects that happen, the sewer treatment plant, which is an EPA mandate, has been out there for years. That we as a city, we've been not addressing. We need to address it. The reality of just providing the basic necessities of what people want is, all of us have listened to the constituents over the years, knocking on doors, people calling us. People are looking for basic needs, the patching of potholes, picking up the trash. We're coming into the season, plowing snow, having sand and salt available. We have a statute that you have to shovel your sidewalks off. Obviously, we all know how much snow we get. Sometimes we don't get snow, other times we get too much snow. But that mandate exists. You are obligated to remove that snow from your sidewalk. We don't even provide sand and salt. We did years ago. But the basic necessities that the taxpayers can provide for themselves, we as a council have to obviously advocate to the mayor to provide that. Because again, the mayor of the city of Gloucester controls literally everything in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Martin, I've been in your fan club for at least 30 years now, and you and your wife do remarkable work in our community. Thank you. It's a good question. I think we have to provide education. Okay, that's a requirement, and it's also a human right. We need to provide fresh drinking water, sewage processing, trash removal and recycling, police and fire protection, safe roads, and economic environment that allows for jobs that then allow people to have those jobs and can afford to live in Gloucester. You also need to elect city councilors who listen. I don't think that's a want, I think it's a must-have, councilors who can listen and have demonstrated that. That's why I'm running, that's why I'd like to earn your vote. Thank you.
So you're absolutely right. There's a lot of things that we have to have and a lot of things we want to have. And I think that as we prioritize the have-to-haves and begin to peel down on those projects and finish them, working on the housing affordability, working on infrastructure improvements, working on making sure that our schools are the best in the area, will generate the kind of economic development that will begin to let us have the things that we want to have. And I think that what we want to have is we want to have a community where people can afford to work and live and have jobs that pay a reasonable wage. You know, the minimum wage is terrific in Massachusetts, but it's not anywhere close to what people need to live. And I think we need to be working on a goal of making this a community where people live, work, and be. And that be part of it is very important, you know, to really enjoy the beauty and the wonderment that we have around us. But it's pretty difficult to do that when you're working 2 and 3 jobs. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Martin, I think it would be a good question for those in B and F to ask that question when loans come forward, because I think that that's helpful. I'm looking right now at 13 things that we have approved, and most of them for sure are have to have. Fire department equipment, truck and ambulance, police station, Rose Baker roof and IT infrastructure inside. The roof is falling apart. Water and sewer infrastructure in Mount Pleasant, surrounding side roads. I was there doing door-to-door yesterday, and so many people are grateful that that's finally happening. Citywide IT improvements, replacement of windows and doors at O'Malley, flood mitigation at wastewater treatment plant, which was part of our MVP plan for municipal vulnerability. GHS flood barrier. I mean, so many of the things on this list are really have to have, but I do think your question is important, and I will suggest that to the BNF folks, to Tony's here, and so is Jeff. So I think that's a good question to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, Martin, we all have to ask that in our own lives all the time. And so that's a very, very important thing that we need to move forward, particularly with, we also have, we just don't have the sewer treatment plant that's coming. We have all of our buildings that require ongoing maintenance because we know exactly what happened when you do deferred maintenance. We went way behind the 8 ball and cost us, 5 times as much to catch up. So, that's a have to have. But we really need to work with the administration who comes forward. And I think, the last couple of years, the administration's been working on previous projects that were in the pipeline. And now we need to have, as we did before, we need to have the 5-year capital plan of must-haves, what Gloucester needs to move forward. There's also a character piece to this that should be added into the must-haves that are not necessarily life or death, but anyway, that's for another day.
Well, I think we're going to wrap it up now.
Yeah, and I think we should all give a big round of applause for our candidates. I might add, I hope you were applauding a terrific audience once again. So thank you for coming. And there's a recording that will go up if you want to look at this again. Thank you.